Welcome to This Explainer. Look, we're going to jump right into things today because we are about to completely dismantle everything you've ever been taught about traditional goal setting, self-help, and basically just getting what you want out of life. We're diving into a really fascinating breakdown of Niccolò Machiavelli's ruthless but absolutely incredible method for success. And I gotta warn you right up front, this is not about hope. It isn't about wishing for things. This is purely about strategy. Seriously, burn your vision board. Take that 5-year plan you wrote out last New Year's, tear it up, and completely throw away those journals where you sit around begging the universe for what you want. Why? Well, because according to this Machiavellian philosophy, doing that is actually keeping you weak. It's keeping you incredibly fragile, and you're serving a future that literally does not exist yet. Every single minute you spend fantasizing is a minute you aren't actually building. I want you to consider this rather harsh reality. A goal is really just a wish disguised as a plan. Most people go through their entire lives stuck in this endless state of becoming. They're always waiting for the promotion, waiting for the relationship, waiting for the money. They live completely in the not yet. And the problem with living in the not yet is that you remain empty right now. You basically become a slave to a result you just can't predict, trading away your present power for a daydream. So, why do you actually set goals? I really want you to stop and ask yourself deeply about that. Why do you write down, I want $1 million, or I want to be happy? The source material we're looking at argues a pretty brutal truth. It's because you're in pain. You're dissatisfied with your present reality, so you cook up this fantasy future just to escape it. The goal isn't a map at all. It's really just a painkiller used to numb the reality of today. This basically leaves us looking at two completely different types of people. On one side, we've got the goal setter. They say something like, I want to be rich, which is just a passive wish, right? They rely heavily on hope and luck, and when reality inevitably hits them, they just collapse. But on the other side, we have the Machiavellian strategist. They rely on necessity and actual skill. They say, I will master the flow of capital and position myself where money literally has to flow through me. One gets absolutely defeated by reality, the other actively uses it to their advantage. Okay, to really understand why goals fail so often, we have to grasp Machiavelli's concept of fortuna. Fortuna is this violent, completely unpredictable river of fate and chaos. If you build your entire identity on the banks of a river called goals, you are inevitably going to drown when the flood comes. And trust me, the flood always comes. The objective here isn't to figure out how to build a better house on the riverbank. It's to become the river itself.
And look, deleting your goals, that is not giving up. It is actually getting incredibly serious about your life. It's the shift from being the dreamer who's constantly looking up at the clouds to becoming the architect who looks straight down at the foundation. Right now, if you're totally obsessed with goals, your foundation is probably cracking because you're way too busy staring at the horizon. You need to look at your feet. Figure out what systems you can control today to actually reinforce the ground you're standing on.
So how do we start acting like the architect? Well, Machiavelli famously wrote, one must be a great feigner and dissembler. We live in an incredibly loud era, don't we? Everyone is constantly broadcasting every single move on social media. But here's the catch. When you announce your goals to the world, your brain releases this hit of cheap dopamine. It gives you the feeling of achievement without actually doing the work. And even worse, it alerts your enemies. It gives people a target. Machiavelli argues we need to be much more like the fox, smart, totally silent, and hyper-aware of the traps. This is absolutely crucial. You have to replace your external goals with internal secret agendas. Pleading for an external goal, like going around saying, I want a promotion, just makes you look weak. It makes you look desperate. But a secret agenda, something like, I will make myself entirely indispensable to the decision makers and literally force their hand, that is internal. It plots instead of pleads. Now, it's way harder to stay quiet than it is to complain or brag, which is exactly why so few people actually do it. But operating this way gives you this magnetic aura of calculated power, because you know something they don't. Which brings us to a really powerful metaphor. Build the bomb in the dark. Talking leaks your power. Doing generates it. Think about it. If you were building a literal bomb, you wouldn't walk around showing everyone the blueprints, right? You'd wire it with absolute precision in the dark, and the only time the world would know about it is when it explodes. Let your results be the only noise you ever make.
I want you to ask yourself a question right now. If I lost everything tomorrow, would I know what to do? Just let that linger for a second. If your honest answer is no, then that completely exposes the fact that you're too attached to your current stability. It means you're fragile. You need to mentally rehearse the total destruction of your life so that you are genuinely prepared for whatever Fortuna throws your way next.
And that segues perfectly into our next big concept, anti-fragility. This is all about positioning yourself to actually benefit, to grow stronger from disorder and chaos. If you lose your job, the fragile goal setter sits around and cries that their big plan is ruined. But the anti-fragile strategist, they say, okay, the terrain is shifted. I'm going to use this urgency to pivot to a higher leverage industry. You don't just sit around complaining that the map is wrong, you aggressively attack the new terrain. When you operate with rigid goals, you are basically a candle. You are terrified of the wind because one strong gust will just blow you out. But when you build a robust Machiavellian system, you are a fire. You actually want the wind. You crave the chaos and the challenge because it only makes you burn hotter and consume more. The obstacles don't extinguish you. They literally become your fuel. Now, here is perhaps Machiavelli's most famous quote of all time. It is safer to be feared than loved. But the source material we're looking at pivots this inward in such a fascinating way. Do you currently love yourself a little too much? Our society constantly preaches this gentle self-care, but so often that just translates to letting yourself sleep in, eat garbage, and skip the hard work. That kind of self-love is actively making you mediocre. The fix for this? You have got to become your own tyrant. You must completely crush the internal rebellion of cheap dopamine and comfort. Your impulses and cravings, they're basically like terrorists holding your potential hostage. And a sovereign does not negotiate with terrorists. You have to develop this deep, tyrannical fear of your own low standards. Practically speaking, it means waking up exactly when you said you would. Zero excuses. No snooze button. When you become ruthless with yourself, you actually become entirely free. Okay, so what do we actually replace goal setting with on a practical day-to-day basis? We replace it with these, the 3 pillars of power: positioning, leverage, and adaptability. This is the ultimate system to finally master Fortuna. Let's break down exactly how you can start applying each of these to your life today. Pillar 1 is positioning. You've got to stop asking, what do I want to achieve? And start asking, where must I be standing? Success isn't a sprint, it's a location. If you want to be wealthy, for example, don't set a silly goal to save money. Physically and mentally position yourself in the exact environment where money is actively being exchanged. You want success to simply be the natural byproduct of where you're standing. Pillar 2 is leverage. Traditional goals are incredibly linear. 1 + 1 = 2. But leverage is exponential. 1 + 1 = 10. Think about it. Machiavelli didn't go out and fight every single battle himself. He used alliances. He used other people's resources. Ask yourself, how can you use technology, capital, or your network to get maximum results with the minimum necessary effort? Honestly, it could be as simple as delegating your low-tier tasks just to free up your mind for high-level strategy. You have to save your energy for the decisive blow. And pillar 3 is adaptability. You literally have to be like water here. Wake up, read the room, read the market, read your own internal energy. If the door is locked, fine, go right through the window. Never be afraid to change direction instantly, because in this framework, you literally cannot fail. You can only be delayed. And to a true strategist, a delay is simply more time to sharpen the blade. 50. In a world completely full of anxious, desperate goal setters screaming at the top of their lungs about their flimsy 5-year plans, the person with a Machiavellian system is king. You become the calm eye of the storm. You stop getting high on the fantasy of tomorrow, and while everyone else around you is panicking, you are quietly, steadily laying the bricks of an empire that is going to stand for 50 years. But to do this, to actually maintain this empire, you face one ultimate, final test. Can you guard the throne of your mind against emotional leakage? Because the absolute second you let your feelings dictate your strategy, the whole system just crumbles. It is a dark, kind of lonely, but incredibly powerful path. The real question is, do you have the true mental stillness required to master it? Think about that for a while, and I will catch you in the next explainer.